Hey, everybody, welcome to the Messengers Podcast. On this week's episode, we touch on a few different things. We're talking about the difference between marketing, advertising, and public relations. We tend to find that small businesses tend to struggle with the difference between those things when you would hire one agency versus another. We also kind of go pretty deep into how to work with some of those agencies from our standpoint, really as a marketing agency. That's kind of where we focus, but really a lot of good information about just in general working with outside contractors, outside companies, and how to set expectations. And really the best way to communicate with those organizations. So stay tuned. All right, welcome everybody to the Messengers Podcast. We are back. We had a little bit of a hiatus there for a few weeks as the summer kind of wrapped up, and our illustrious James went on tour with a rock band for a little while, and we had a few things going on here, but we are back. We are in gear for the rest of 2019 to kind of wrap in some more weekly episodes for everybody here. So we appreciate you coming back, joining us again. Today we wanted to talk a little bit about working with a marketing company. We find there tends to be a learning process that we see new business owners, small business owners go through when it comes to beginning to work with a marketing company for the first time. Sometimes there's not the knowledge there as far as what to expect, what you should do kind of leading into that relationship and how you should prepare yourself for it, what you should expect out of the organization that you're working with. And I guess really kind of cover some marketing 101 type stuff too, just to kind of identify the difference between a marketing agency, an advertising agency, a PR agency, and really try to help kind of drill down into what each one of those is, why they're different, how they're different, and what you should expect when working with any of them. So I don't know, Rob, if you want to maybe talk a little bit about some of the common questions that you get, and you want to start that way.
I can.
We could
I
start
can
with
comment on some of the more common questions people have in meetings, and maybe help people better prepare, like you said in the beginning, for what the initial meeting is going to entail and information.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I know we touched on in previous podcasts, but preparing themselves by having a budget in mind. That's something that we talked about. They should just know about that. They also, I think in general...
Well, budget, I guess, sorry to interrupt, but I guess budget is kind of a good place to start because really then you have to kind of identify what are you budgeting for, right? Which would be, we did do an episode about how to set a marketing budget and what you should be budgeting, but we didn't really necessarily, I guess we did touch a little bit on what that kind of covers, but comprehensively didn't really talk about what I was just saying, maybe the difference between PR, advertising, marketing, and how they are all kind of interrelated and what you're budgeting for. If you say, well, this is my marketing budget, but you don't actually know what's supposed to come out of that budget, that can be a little tricky. So, I think the most common confusion that I see is in the difference between marketing and public relations,
Right.
Especially these days because they're becoming so intermingled with social media and the way that marketing has kind of evolved in the digital age and the social media age.
Sure.
Because I kind of, it was always traditionally your marketing organization and your PR organization were completely separate within a larger business. That marketing did what it did, PR did what it did. PR was generally government relations, media relations, community relations, all those kind of things kind of fell under the guise of PR,
Right.
where marketing was that kind of stereotypical, the 4 Ps: product, price, promotion, placement. And, that still is kind of the case, but the problem with that is with the advent of social media and the use of tools like Twitter and Facebook to engage with customers and engage with the community and engage with the media, they are starting to kind of mix a little bit.
Overlap.
And I really kind of feel like PR these days should be like the fifth P in the marketing mix, where you have product, price, place, promotion, and PR, where that's kind of never been the case, where PR kind of sat next to marketing. I feel like these days it really should kind of fall under the general purview of the marketing department, because with review, online review apps being so prevalent, and the management of how you handle bad reviews and responding to even good reviews and getting back to customer complaints that are coming through your marketing channels. They really kind of, you need to make sure your messaging is consistent and similar across those, and that those entities are communicating with each other well. So, I mean, that's me. From that standpoint, though, if you kind of take PR out of that mix, you have your product, price, place, promotion left, which would be the typical 4 Ps of the marketing mix. Place is basically distribution. Where is your product going to be available for somebody to purchase? Product is, what are you selling? Price is, what does it cost? And promotion is, how are you actually going to let people know that it's there and available to purchase, which is where you kind of come into the difference between, and even at a more granular level, advertising and marketing. Marketing covers all of those things, where advertising doesn't really. Advertising is, the price is what it is, the product is what it is. We know what we have to sell, who our target is, and we're going to put an ad together. We're going to advertise that product. Where marketing is much more comprehensive. It's actually trying to evaluate the market itself, who you're trying to reach, what that demographic can afford, what they're willing to pay for your product, how you can properly price that in comparison to competition. All of those things kind of across the board. How are you going to distribute it? Where is it going to be available? What's the best place to get the most exposure in distribution and things like that. So as kind of a 30,000 foot view of PR versus marketing versus advertising, that's kind of an overview of those things. Within the promotion aspect of marketing is where you tend to find most marketing agencies will kind of fall, because we don't often get clients that come in here that want help with pricing their product. Right. That being said, it might not be a bad idea to engage a marketing agency for that. It just doesn't typically tend to work that way for smaller businesses that we kind of, small and kind of mid-tier organizations.
Sometimes we come across clients that really don't have any sense of that whatsoever. I mean, I know we've had meetings with people, and you'll discuss their marketing plan with them, and they really have no marketing plan at all.
Right.
They're all these things that you're bringing up now in this podcast, they haven't really considered them.
Well, and pricing's tough, right? If you've never really gone through that process, that's one of the areas I struggled with most when I first started my first business was, what do I charge for my time? How do I know what my time is worth, and how do I come up with that formula? And without having an idea of how to break that down and say, well, not only do I need to figure out, well, what am I worth, right, in comparison to what my skill set is versus what the market is charging for similar skill sets or higher or lower skill sets. Will somebody pay that for me and the work that I'm producing? What other factors need to go into that? Obviously, you have overhead. I just wrote a blog article, and I'll link to it in the show notes here, but about kind of the difference between a freelancer and an entrepreneur, which goes into that kind of pricing issue in a lot more detail. And the gist of that is one of the biggest problems we see when we see freelancers that then try to kind of grow into a business, which would kind of is what I would distinguish the difference between a freelancer and an entrepreneur. Freelancer is somebody that charges for their time and their work, and they get paid for that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's, you can have a good life and make a good living doing that. The difference, I think, between a freelancer and an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur is then able to take that model, that concept, and scale it beyond just themselves. And that is, I think, the hardest part that I see people struggle with, or the element that I think people struggle with most is kind of going from 1 to 2. Because when you go and you look at, well, I'm working from home on a computer that I was going to have anyway because I need a computer in my house, or, I've just always had a laptop or whatever. And, I can do that. I can charge for my time. As long as I get paid well for my time, that's great. To I need to hire somebody else. And now hiring somebody else, a lot of people look at it and go, well, I can double my production. But you can't double your production because now you need to manage somebody else, and you need to then spend more time acquiring new customers to keep that person busy. You need to service those customers. You need to handle complaints. You need to deal with, well, what about when that person's on vacation and now my workforce gets cut in half for a week and I have deadlines and all the, so there's all of those issues that you don't have when it's just you, that just come flooding in when you add somebody else. And then, kind of wrapping that back to pricing, your pricing model was based on it just being you.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're realizing, well, because I'm only doing 25, 35, 40% more work than I was doing when it was just me, my prices have to come up, and for a lot of people, sometimes the only reason that, or not the only reason, but the primary reason they were getting the work they were getting is because they were less expensive. They did good work at a lower cost, but they were able to do it at a lower cost because they didn't have the overhead that whoever they were competing against, the bigger businesses that they're competing against, have, and they need to deal with, employee benefits and providing health insurance and retirement plans and all that kind of stuff that you just don't have to deal with when it's just you. And so that pricing is, can be a major factor, and it certainly wouldn't hurt if you're new at it to engage somebody else's help in trying to help kind of develop what you should be charging and whether or not it's too high, too low, or kind of is going to fit that meaty part of the marketing mix.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just thinking more about the people that meet with us about marketing. And issues that we've had. I mean, I know in the beginning you asked me about it, and I've been thinking about it a little bit more here while we've been talking. I think a major issue, and I know you brought it up recently, and we've talked about it, is with clients when there's a lack of trust with your marketing company, or an investment in belief in what they can do for you, and a failure, in communication with clients. Those types of issues are something that we deal with, quite often. I think it's important that people understand that they're kind of handing over the reins at some point, and there are going to be certain responsibilities for them, and they're going to have to relinquish some control in order for us to do our job properly.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about it in a previous episode, and it's something that I believe I kind of stole from Seth Godin. So I'm sorry, Seth, but not really, because I'm giving credit, I guess. But the difference between hiring a professional and an amateur. Mm-hmm. And the idea is, or at least from Seth, is you hire an amateur to deliver what you want. You hire a professional to deliver the right solution for your business. Mm-hmm. And that's an important thing, an important distinction to understand when you first decide to engage the services of a marketing company, and to be honest with yourself about, and to be honest with that agency about, to know where you want to fit in that realm and why you're hiring that agency in the first place. If you are a marketing genius, and you know that whatever you're going to do, that it's based in a lot of experience, that that you're really good at it, then make sure that you are upfront with that agency that, look, this is what I do, this is what I'm good at, I want what I want, I'm going to tell you what I want, I'm going to be very clear about that. Please, I just need to expand my workforce using your talent pool. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as that agency knows what the expectation is up front.
Yeah.
On the other side, what's that?
I was just going to say, we have a client just like that went to school for marketing, worked for a period of time in marketing, and has, recently stepped into his family business, the nursery business. But when he comes in to talk about his plan for the year, he's versed in it, and he knows what he wants to do, and he has his marketing plan together.
Yep.
And that's great.
And he asks for opinions and stuff like that, but ultimately he's very clear about what he wants, and the stuff that he does is, it works. It's it's and it's a smooth process because it was very clearly understood from the beginning, and it just works. It works. On the other side, we have the opposite, where we have clients who kind of know what they don't know, and they know that they're engaging us for our expertise, and they understand. And again, they'll ask questions, and they'll wonder why we choose to do certain things a certain way, or what the reasoning behind certain decisions are. But ultimately, they trust that we know what we do, and we're good at what we do, and so there's a trust there, and an understanding that that's the reason they are engaging with us, is that it adds a capability that they don't have. It's not just kind of an extension of their workforce. This is organizational knowledge that we don't have, that we want to engage another firm for. And these tips kind of go far beyond just working with a marketing company. I mean, whenever you're going to hire anything out, that's applicable, to be able to say, to have a real solid understanding of what your capabilities are, what the company that you're working with's capabilities are, and how those are going to kind of meld and work together to deliver an end result that's a positive step forward for your business. And I think where the issues, when there are issues, where they tend to come into play, are in, and we see it from time to time, where we have clients who don't want to necessarily be involved in the process. They kind of want to offload something, but they don't want something that's not exactly what they had in their head.
Right.
And they're kind of unwilling to accept somebody else's interpretation of the project that they're working on, but they're also unwilling to put the time in to be very clear and explicit in letting us know what that is, what they have in their head, what that idea is, and kind of expect us to just be mind readers, and know exactly what it is that they're looking for, and that's where we tend to see where the problems kind of come up.
Yeah, I mean, that overall, that's a problem in general, and we see it a lot in the design phase of things, specifically. When we get to it, lack of communication is the problem. I mean, it's great when a client comes in and they say, hey, this is what I need help with, and they really don't give us any direction, and we say, okay, we'll take the reins and go with it, and we go with it, and the feedback is, it's
That's not what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's not what I'm. I don't like what you did, but then that's it. There's no other further feedback,
Right.
And then when we try, trying to
Why not
find out what their vision is, we can probably try to conform to that if it works for what they're doing. If not, we'll advise them and say,
Right.
hey, you're not really considering your market correctly, or
Well, and there's always an element of, if that's what you really want, certainly that's what, and we try to always kind of advise as to why we make certain decisions, so that we make sure that from the client's standpoint, it happens a lot with in web design development especially when we develop copy for websites, where a lot of times, and this just happened actually recently, where we had this conversation with a client where we wrote the copy for their entire website. And then one of the initial feedback items we got was that some of the terminology that we used wasn't consistent across the entire website. And they wanted it to be consistent, which from an initial look at it makes sense, right? I would probably say the same thing if if I'm looking at a brochure and, how my services and products are described and stuff like that, then I definitely would want to see some consistency across those. From the website of things, it was done purposefully that way because we looked at how people were searching for the products and services that they offered, and made sure that we tried to target those keywords and those key phrases throughout the website. So it was purposefully done that we didn't use the same terminology throughout the entire website, because we wanted to make sure when somebody searched for it this way, they'll show up. When somebody else searches for it this way, they'll still show up, because essentially it's the same service. They're just using different terminology, different phrasing. And so we always, our response is always, we will make that change for you if you really want us to, but here's why it was done the way that it was done.
Right.
You decide whether or not you feel like that's important enough to, which one is more important, and that's the way that we'll go. But a lot of times, kind of to your point, where we'll get some feedback, which is just, well, it's not what I was looking for. And we say, well, but you weren't clear in what you were looking for. And right now you're not really being clear in why what we did isn't what you're looking for and what's not working for you. And that's where we struggle a little bit, trying to get somebody's vision out of their own head. And I think there's some self-awareness that kind of needs to go into that too, when it's you, to understand whether or not you are able to clearly communicate that vision, and know that if you're not, there's nobody out there. You might get lucky 1 in 100 times, and somebody might
read your mind.
Exactly. Might give you exactly what you're looking for because you got lucky. Right. But that's a rarity. And that's, and especially when you're talking about things like design that are so subjective, and, it just...
Those types of things can happen over the course of time with the client, and it takes a long time to understand what they want from something. It's like building a relationship. If the person can't communicate clearly what they want, just like in a relationship, you have to read their mind and find what they like and what they don't like. A lot of trial and error. And it takes a lot longer to do it that way, and it's clearly because of that issue, because of the inability of the client to communicate clearly what they want from us.
Well, and that's an important point too, is the amount of additional time, because that's one of the things that we see too, where when that happens, when you're not really clear from the get-go in what you want, that when you're working with an agency or a freelancer or anybody that charges for their time, you're taking up more of their time, right? And if you're not able to clearly communicate what you're looking for, it's one thing if you're clear and you say, this is what I want, and somebody just doesn't or can't deliver what you want, that's one thing. But if you can't really be clear enough, and you're basically just asking somebody to keep trying to get closer and closer to what's in your head without really being able to get that out of your head, there needs to be an understanding that you're going to pay more, and you're not going to necessarily end up with a product that is worth what it's going to cost you. But if that's part of your process and that's the only way for you to kind of get where you need to be, you just need to understand that those services are always just going to cost you more than they cost other people because of that process.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a benefit to try to communicate all that stuff up front. We keep going back to that, and it's, constantly it's like a frustration at points with clients that aren't doing it because you know they're going to be billed for the time, but you know that this project could have been accomplished in a fraction of the time. And it's not like we don't want to get paid for the work we do here, but it just seems wasteful
Right.
of time and energy on our part when you're guessing at things rather than just having a clear understanding. If you always feel that if someone just listened more, that the communication process would be much easier. And we're fairly specific and clear in our communication here, always. You know, we do checklists, we do questionnaires, we do, reach out to people with email communications with, clear points in it that need to be addressed. And a lot of the time it's not addressed and time is wasted and the clients end up spending more money. And,
Well, and that's I guess to kind of touch on two of those things. One is, we get paid for it because we need to get paid for it. I mean, that's a big, we do a lot of things here, but selling our time is a big part of what we do. So if there's something that's going to take up more of our time, that's out of our control, it's not that we just screwed the pooch and something took us twice as long as it really should have or something like that. If it's because we can't get answers to questions that we're asking or, can't have, there isn't any clear feedback or clear communication coming back. We don't like that either, not because it's a waste of our time, but because it's a waste of your money. Where a lot of times I feel like there's especially when it comes to small business owners, there's, I tend to find, I think everybody has time management issues across the board. I know I do. I struggle with time management big time. And I work on it a lot. There are a lot of people who, have run good sized businesses working with really high performing, high functioning individuals who all have time management issues, who all want to get better at how they manage their time to be more productive and do more things. But I tend to find on the small business side of things, the people that we deal with and that we talk to on a regular basis always seem overwhelmed, that there's always no time for anything. There's no time. And I think what tends to happen when it comes then to working with, when they outsource work, the understanding is I'm hiring you so I don't have to put any time into this project, where that's not really the case, because if you don't put any time into the project, you're going to get our best guess at what you wanted. Right. And then a lot of times you're also dealing with people that are entrepreneurs and small business owners that are controlling, that like things the way that they want them. So when you're kind of dealing with those two kind of competing issues, it's somebody that wants what they want, but they don't want to spend the time or feel like they don't have the time to spend to convey what they want.
Yes.
The hope is, well, I'm going to pay somebody and I'm gonna hire a good reputable company to do it for me, so I don't have to spend the time doing it. And that's just not how it works. And by spending a little bit of time up front to be very clear in your communication as to what your expectations are, what you're looking for, that's where you're going to really get the value that you're looking for out of paying somebody else to do it. And I think that's where one of the biggest issues is in that kind of clash of, I want complete control over this, but I don't have the time to do it myself.
Right.
How do I kind of make those jive?
Yeah, no, it's common, and people have to understand how to balance that and make it work. I mean, that's the upfront communication is the investment.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click the links for more from the Messengers, and visit us at messengers.blog for links to our social and more exclusive content from the Messengers. Thanks.